Welcome to Dialogues for Change. Life is not a void to be filled. It is a plenitude to be discovered. Today, I would like to share with you some thoughts from the Development Dictionary, very nice book edited by Wolfgang Sachs. And more specifically, I would like to share some thoughts by Illich on the question of needs. Under the mask of compassion. Development can be visualized as a process by which people are lifted out of their traditional cultural commons. In this transition, cultural bonds are dissolved, even though culture can continue to tinge development in superficial ways. One need only observe rural people recently transplanted to the megacities of the Third World. Development can be imagined as a blast of wind that blows people off their feet, out of their familiar space, and places them on an artificial platform, a new structure of living. In order to survive on this exposed and raised foundation, people are compelled to achieve new minimum levels of consumption, for example, informal education, public health measures, frequency in the use of transportation and rental housing. The overall process is usually couched in the language of engineering. The creation of infrastructures, the building and coordination of systems, various growth stages, social escalators. Even rural development is discussed in this urban language. Under the heavy weight of the new structures, the cultural bedrock of poverty cannot remain intact. It cracks. People are forced to live on a fragile crust below which something entirely new and inhuman lurks. In traditional poverty, people could rely on finding a cultural hammock, and there was always the ground level to depend on as a squatter or beggar. This side of the grave, no one could sink below ground. Hell was a real pit, but it was for those who had not shared with the poor in this life, to be suffered after death. This no longer holds. Modernized dropouts are neither beggars nor bums. They are victimized by the needs attributed to them by some poverty pimp. They have fallen through the poverty line, and each passing year diminishes their chances of ever rising again above the line to satisfy the needs they now attribute to themselves. Welfare is not a cultural hammock. It is an unprecedented mediation of scarce resources through agents who not only define what need is and certify where it exists, but also closely supervise its remedy, with or without the needy's approval. Social insurance is not reliance on community support in case of disaster. Rather, it is one of the ultimate forms of political control in a society in which protection against future risks is valued higher than access to present satisfaction or joy. Needs discussed as criteria for development strategies clearly have nothing to do with either traditional necessities or desires, as I suggested above. And yet, during the second and third development decades, people by the million have learned to experience their poverty in terms of unmet operationalized needs. Paradoxically, needs became a most powerful emblem in spite of the fact that, for the mainstream economist, need is a non-word. Economic theory does not acknowledge that there are such things as needs. Further, economics can say much that is useful about wants, preferences, and demands. But need is a moral, psychological, or physical imperative which brooks no compromise or adjustment, or economic analysis. Most economists, up to the present day, declare themselves incompetent to include needs in their analysis, and prefer to leave the needs discussion to philosophers or politicians. On the other hand, a growing number of economists, critical of conventional development theory and practice, place in basic needs the foundation for what came to be called the new economic order. They find in needs the term for non-negotiable, mutually incommensurable requirements of human nature. Powerfully, they root economic theory in the ontological status of being human. They argue that unless basic needs are provided for by the economy, economic preferences, choices, and wants just cannot be effectively formulated. The new world order is built on the foundations of a humanity whose basic needs have been met, thanks to a new kind of economy that recognizes their existence. But before the concept of needs could be incorporated in an economic argument, it had to be defined and classified. For this undertaking, Abraham Maslow's theory of a needs hierarchy, somewhat belatedly became very influential. Indeed, physical safety, affection, esteem, and ultimately self-realization needs underlie most current discussions as the key categories. Unlike wants, which, since Hobbes, are considered equal to each other, since they are simply what people want, needs are consistently discussed as fitting into a hierarchy which has an objective and normative status. They are generally spoken about as realities to be disinterestedly studied by needs experts. Some of the new economists go so far as to make of this needs hierarchy the cornerstone of a new ethic. For example, Erich Fromm believed that the sane society is an arrangement that, quote, corresponds to the needs of man, not necessarily to what he feels to be his needs, because even the most pathological aims can be felt subjectively as that which the person wants most, but to what his needs are objectively, as they can be ascertained by the study of man. Quote closed. Up to now, the most complete critical study of the needs discourse and its implication has been made by Marianne Gronemeyer. She argues that needs, in the current sense, are a new way of formulating the assumption of universal scarcity. Following her argument, it becomes likely that the public credibility of economic assumptions, which is already wavering, can survive only if a new economics reconstructs itself on the assumption of definable basic needs. Further, Gronemeyer shows that needs, defined in terms of ostensibly scientific criteria, permit a redefinition of human nature according to the convenience and interests of the professionals who administer and serve these needs. An economy based on wants, whether it be for therapy, education, or transportation, now inevitably leads to socially intolerable levels of polarization. By contrast, an economy based on needs, including their identification by experts and well-managed satisfaction, can provide unprecedented legitimacy for the use of this science in the service of the social control of needy man. Needs, as a term and as an idea, occupy a place within current mental topology that did not exist in the constellation of meanings of previous epochs. During the second development decade, the notion of needs began to shine like a supernova in the semantic sky. As Gronemeyer has argued, insistence on basic needs has now defined the human phenomenon itself as divisible. The needs discourse implies that you can become either more or less human. It is as normative and double-edged a tool as some powerful drug. By defining our common humanity by common needs, we reduce the individual to a mere profile of his needs. These are very challenging and thought-provoking thoughts, especially as we do have internalized this world vision of needs very, very much, and that it does seem quite natural to us, and that we are not aware of its cultural assumptions, the underlying horizon in which it all makes sense. So I hope that these little insights by Ivan Illich shook you up to maybe take a different look at some of our contemporary realities. I hope these thoughts inspired you on this Thursday, 28th of June 2012. Thank you.